And we're back. This is GI Joburg episode 281, Operation Wingfield. Last week we recorded a podcast. We had some unfinished business, and Paul said, well, why don't we do it next week? And I thought to myself, well, that's a very, very good idea. But who am I? My name is Steve. I do have said criminal Paul waiting in the box. Come out the box, Paul. Come, Paulie. Hello. There you are.
Operation Wingfield. Operation Wingfield. Who else is joining us tonight, Steve?
Yeah, it's not a two-hander. There are three of us in attendance. Our third member of this operation goes by the name Rob. Hello, Rob.
Hey, it's me. I've joined the show. Wow. 2 weeks in a row, guys. What's happening? Is it 2022 again?
Return to old form. Yes, listeners, you've been treated to GI Joburg twice now. But there's a reason for this. Paul, you said that Operation Wingfield demanded some special attention. Issue number 4 of the ARAL comic from 1982, I'm going to say. Gosh, I should have the date in front of me. But anyways, it is part of that initial first batch of issues, sort of proto-GI Joe. And this one has a few notable aspects. We're going to get into it. But at its heart, it is a paramilitary organization on American soil which has somehow come into possession of not one, but 2 nuclear weapons, a means to deliver it to a target in the USSR. And I suppose the countdown has begun. Can G.I. Joe get to the mystery of this crazed camp of military lunatics before it's too late, before the finger moves to its fateful position on the little red button and presses it?
Yeah. I mean, before midnight happens, you know. Dudes,
but how you guys been?
Comic.
Oh yeah, that.
Sorry, man. Sorry.
I want to know how your week's been. I know we're very excited to kind of like rush into this, but like, how's the week been, guys? What's going on in your lives?
I'm so glad Rob is the one asking this. Thanks, man.
Amazing.
I'm gonna start just because I'm already talking. It's been a pretty cool week. It's been a pretty cool week for me. I got some good news in the form of the people that I rent my apartment from. They actually asked us if we'd be interested in buying it. So that's possibly going down. We haven't had numbers or anything shared. They just asked if we're interested, and I was like, yes, because they would ask the tenants first. So that was cool. So that's kind of biggish news. Celia kicked some serious ass with her new job. That was pretty amazing.
Hell yeah!
Yeah, it's pretty awesome stuff. And like shame. Like it was a good win for her, and it's really, really cool. Then my business partner from GI Joburg, my business partner from Gunplay SA, he was in Taiwan, and he just came back and he brought me a few goodies from Taiwan, which is really awesome. The cool thing is it's actually nothing, like very little new stuff, but his brother was getting rid of all of his old Gundam stuff, so he basically donated it to Jeff and myself, and so we got a whole bunch of new Gundam kits, which is pretty cool. So that was pretty rad. And went paintballing yesterday, so kind of an eventful week. Yeah,
paintballing. You could have led with that. That's big. Cool, man.
Yeah, I'll say
that's the coolest news of all.
Yeah.
How'd it go? Did you win?
Yeah, but like, it's not really. They're kind of shallow or hollow victories because it's my friend's little brother's birthday, so it's a bunch of like 12-year-olds, and so.
That's still a win, my dude. That's still a win.
So like the thing is, I was trying to push that the kids were mostly on our side because I didn't want to shoot at children. But like those little dudes, they kicked butt, man. It was fun. It was good times. Hey, it's a gas! Wow. Sorry, you just jumped into the comments now. That's awesome.
Jumped in. Gas. Damn.
Hello, Gaz. Welcome, Berg Force man.
Welcome.
But that was fun, man. That was really fun.
I spent the last couple of days in Sydney. Needed to get my Greek passport renewed, and they've got a consulate general in Sydney, a consulate general in Perth, in Canberra, in Melbourne, and in Brisbane. So I was going to fly up just for the day, get it all done, have my interview and hand in my documents and photographs and all that jazz. But no, then decided let's make a family trip of it. Fortunately, we have family there. So we had a place to stay, and that was fun. It's nice to meet some extended family of Kim's. She said that we were going to arrive on Tuesday and leave on Saturday. Cool. So come Saturday, I learn via Facebook group that there is a toy show, like a toy convention on Saturday.
Ooh.
And
Oh,
I'm
shit.
flipping my wig. I'm like, this is awesome. I love the idea of going to a big toy show and basically having a hunt, like rummaging through bins for treasure, which is something that you can't do online. You can buy pretty much everything there is for a price online, and it kind of takes the fun out of things. The opportunity to go to a place physically and see what there is to buy, that really excites me and sets my inner child alight.
I'm a child.
So I was excited at the prospect of this. Then I researched it, and it says on the website, "Oh, it's on Sunday." So I'm like, "Oh man!" And I pick a bone with the guy who posted it and said, "Do you know it's on Sunday, mate?" And then without telling me, he just edited his post. So I was like, "Oh, now I look like an idiot." Don't you hate it when that happens, guys?
Yeah, you should have
Someone-
screenshotted it and shared it and be like, look at this moron. Doesn't even know when his own show's on.
Yeah, that would be
Nah.
going full Karen. No, you did
it's
go to
beneath
That's what I
me.
would have done.
But then
I would have done that.
we're at the mall on Saturday, just getting some, I suppose, treats
Let's
for
go
Elliot
to
in his
the
lunchbox before we board the flight. Kim is going online to check us in, and she's like, "Hang on, we're leaving on Sunday." I cocked up the dates. I'm
You were
like,
double Karen.
immediately. Yeah, dude, I flip out. I'm like, yes, I could go to the toy show. Awesome.
Let's go see the toys. Sorry.
Yeah, but I couldn't get a ride there. I tried asking guys in that Joe group because it's a 1.5 hour train ride away from where I was staying. That's a 3 hour round trip on public transport on a Sunday when I'm not entirely certain of the train schedule. I mean, sure, you can ask Google, but like there are delays all the time. And with a flight at the end of the day, so I didn't have the nerve to go through with it. Even after fate handed me a softball. If we had a car at our disposal, different story. But I also didn't have the nerve to ask the family, "Hey guys, can I borrow one of your luxury cars for about 4 hours?" Yeah, not going to happen. So unfortunately, a tale of woe in the end. I'm sorry. What an anticlimax. Ooh. But Sydney's great. It's a phenomenal place. It's really this hub of like waterways, a port, like a commercial port and a pleasure port and beaches and cities and airport. And it reminds me of New York in a sense. You know, that kind of integration with water and also having everything like skyscrapers and okay, well, at least Sydney also has, in addition to all that, like nice beaches. So it's epic and busy. Yeah. 10 out of 10, we'll recommend. Well done, Sydney. You put on a good show. In fact, the one night they had this like crazy light show installation. Actually, it's going to be running for weeks, but it's called Vivid, and we were there on the first night, so there were some pretty cool fireworks. Elias was on my shoulders saying, "More fire! More fire!"
Aw.
He wanted more. It's very exciting.
Fire.
Give me all the fire, Daddy.
I wanted to shout at the top of my lungs, "Super spreader event!" We were elbow to elbow with lots of people in the same spot that, like historically, I think this is where Australia's brush with COVID started. It's like a port of entry in the middle of Sydney, which disembarked a ship full of like COVID patients, basically. Like before the authorities had a firm enough handle on like border restrictions, and hotel quarantine and all that stuff. These people were kind of released into the population, and that's kind of ground zero for where COVID started in this here country.
Australia's Wuhan.
Pretty much. So yeah, no, but I go against my urge of like saying deliberately like, I don't know, caustic shit, because Kim gives me a hard time about it. She's like, you don't always have to speak your mind, Stephen. Like, don't play devil's advocate. I don't like hearing it. Like, you're the doctor. Surely this shit should be going through your mind too. Anyway, I'm glad we've reached a sense of normalcy.
An anarchist.
I don't know, man. I guess I have these urges and I can't really keep them at bay. Like, I want to rub people up the wrong way and see what they do. Bad Stephen. But I resisted. You'd be proud.
Club of you.
Yeah.
You
I took shipwreck in Polly.
I saw that.
Sorry, Rob. Continue. A good
no, right. No,
election as the president.
I was getting ready to segue us into the comic book.
Very good.
No, but
Are
Rob
you saying I should be Vance Wingfield?
Oh, Wingfield. No, what? Sorry, I'm confused now. We're all talking.
Are you telling me I'm a good candidate for playing Vance Wingfield?
Well, for that sort of like I don't even know where I'm going anymore. I'm sorry. You guys threw me off my witty train.
Oh,
and
we don't want to do
Rob,
that.
seeing as you asked us how we are, how are you, dude? What have you been up to, man? Like, was it a good week? Are you
this
cool?
week, it was an okay week. Unfortunately, last Sunday my glasses kind of broke, so I've had to fix them with a paper clip the whole week. So I went Tuesday to get eye test, and like, how long would it take to actually get new glasses? I thought it's been over like 15 years since I last got glasses, so I thought it has to go faster than it used to. It can't take 2 weeks. No, it takes 2 weeks. It takes 2 weeks for them to I don't know, like collect the sand, and blast it into fucking glass, and then make my lenses, individually. There's like a little man in a room, and he, files it down like, this is the right one. Yes, this is the right one. So yeah, it's going to be another week and a half before I have new glasses. I'm just going to have to look like an idiot.
The sarcasm is real, ladies and gentlemen.
But that's fine. Otherwise, yeah, a very relaxing week. I didn't do much. I've started watching The Mentalist and House. I think I mentioned last time.
Oh yeah, you're a housewife now. I forget.
Yep, I'm a housewife now.
Housewife of GI Joburg.
And I'm on season 2 of both shows now, and it's quite cool. I mean, I never watched them properly when they came out. I think I caught random episodes, so it's nice to kind of like binge shows that you never watched before. It's kind of got me in the mood now to watch other shows. I've been in the mood to watch like TV series in quite a long time.
What's next, Rob? CSI?
I don't know. It's not available on any of the streaming services I have.
Law and Order, Special Victims Unit.
Oh, I could do that.
Okay.
I mean, that's a laugh.
Yeah, well, actually, okay, like, full disclosure, pardon me. I really dig Law and Order, by the way.
Oh, no, Law and Order is fantastic.
Yeah,
if I could watch it, I probably would, but I did watch it fairly religiously when it came out. So I'd be like skipping a lot of episodes, but otherwise this week I was wondering, like, we're looking at the old G.I. Joe comic books and we're looking at the end of G.I. Joe. And obviously last year, G.I. Joe ended the comic book at 300, but it was, it was rumored to be picked up somewhere else. There's still no news about where it's going. And we're like almost halfway through the year, and yet there's still no new news regarding like, where's issue 301 going to come out? Have you guys thought about this? Like, what's going on?
I don't need to think about this. I feel like my opinions are fed to me by the rotation of podcasts that I listen to. So I'm just going to parrot. I'm going to kind of shotgun name my sources so that I don't miss anybody. But Full Force Podcast, Anything Joe's, Podcast from the Pit, Talking Joe, and Audible Interlude. So those opinions swathed together in a giant cocktail of opinion. I think
a cock opinion.
there might be, if they were smart, if Hasbro was smart about like rising the tide for this brand and raising all ships, they would make the announcement as part of Yojo June. That would be a wonderful, like, additional item, which is not made by Hasbro, but definitely a Hasbro brand to promote. And it would show a kind of just a bit of teamwork, a bit of cooperation between the brand holders. Like, the Hasbro team have done this in the past. They've spoken a bit about comic books. They've spoken a bit about the Super 7 initiatives. And, like, you know, Emily's added Instagram posts from their booth at San Diego Comic-Con and stuff. I think it was San Diego Comic-Con. Anyways. So it would be nice, ideally. Also, there is the possibility that it is announced at San Diego Comic-Con this year, which is in July, because Larry Hama just posted that he will be in attendance to do some promotional work.
Okay, so that's what the general of the community right now is that we're gonna hear soon.
We're gonna hear soon.
Holding off.
Yeah. Well, the other opinion is just like you say, Rob, and that's, where's this announcement? I mean, Larry's by this stage, I think 3 issues deep, maybe more, into scripting of the new run. So clearly they want to have a few books in hand at the launch, because, you know, delays do happen, and yeah, there are various reasons for that, potentially. I'm not going to name names, but yeah, maybe they are holding off on getting the ball rolling for the public until they've got maybe 5 issues in hand, or Yojo June, or Comic-Con in July, whichever comes first. Or long.
So, I can't remember the source, but apparently there's rumors of a possibility of a G.I. Joe Transformers movie.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Well. It all stems from, and I think Full Force alerted me to the fact with their post, it all stems from the fact that there's a post-credits teaser, apparently, in Rise of the Beasts. All of a sudden, I have an urge to see that film now. That reason alone. Yeah.
There's a reason to watch that movie? Wow.
Yeah.
This should be a spoiler, though. I feel like I've just run my big mouth. But that's, I mean, in order to plug this this news story leak in time, that is what Paul is referring to. The potential for this hybrid G.I. Joe Transformers crossover stems from this latest Transformers forthcoming release. Forthcoming as of recording this podcast.
Nice. Well, I mean, I've said it before on the show on many occasions, that the military sections of the Transformers movies are some of the best G.I. Joe movies made. So,
yeah, I definitely agree with that. The action is always very, very good with the humans, despite them being completely superfluous to a Transformers story.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so maybe G.I. Joe can do something or bring something interesting or bring interesting energy. But on the topic of G.I. Joe, should we see what's happening with Operation Wingfield and why I think it's so important, and why I think it's an issue that should get its own spotlight on an episode.
Wow. We're a G.I. Joe podcast. I forgot.
Okay, so
Transformers and not CSI. Lord.
So Steve, you're 100%
not a travel podcast either. Sorry, guys. That's
no, man. Fault. We have lives. People listen to us because we also, have lives, and
have lives.
We have lives, man. We're not just a news agency or something.
I'm very lively.
So Steve was right. This book did come out in October 1982. So that's pretty good. Yeah. So
Steven knows.
The Jabba brain has not failed us on this one yet. It's crazy, the archives. So the thing about this issue that I find quite fascinating is it's the 4th issue. We've had a Cobra threat recently, and this book starts off and it's got this ugly mug of this dude, and he's all like, listen up, troops, and maggots.
Oh wait, can we talk about the cover? Oh, okay. Well, let's talk about the ugly mug.
You want to talk about the cover?
Well, okay. I wanted to get a distillation of your reason for why we should do this issue on its own, Paul. But I think you're about to launch into the review.
Yeah, well, okay. Here's my thing.
I guess I only want to talk about the cover for one reason.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with the interior. Alright.
That too. But it has not one, but two potential friendly fire incidents. For anyone
I had
listening
one of
to the
those on
podcast,
Saturday.
oh really? Jeez,
Yeah.
kids, huh?
Yeah.
For anyone listening and not fully aware, or they don't have the comic book in front of you, this is the cover that is fairly nondescript. It's a Milgram and Hall cover, and it's GI Joe just charging at the camera, running on like an asteroid, basically. The first couple of members are a little bit more descriptive than the ones at the back. They quickly kind of fade into obscurity, but working our way from front to back, it's Hulk with a beret, Snake Eyes looking like Spider-Man with suspenders in black, Scarlet with amazing hair, Stalker, Rock and Roll, Flash, I'm going to say, and then it just kind of devolves into green shirts. But Stalker and one of the green shirts is like firing at the Joes in front of them. It's very strange.
Maybe they're not
Yeah,
actually the
Stalker's-
Joes. I mean, her hair is too good to actually be the real Scarlet.
Oh, synthoids. Gotcha.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, Mark from Talking Joe actually took the Stalker image and flipped him to correct this ages old art flub. I mean, assuming it is a flub. Like, look, Paul, you're the artist of the group. How does an artwork get to this stage? Like, do they do each individual character separately? That's not how it was done back then. This is
No,
a more
back then you
traditional
probably...
approach.
It depends. I mean, it depends on the artist. It could have just been a full spread that was done over roughs, like traced over roughs, on a light board, and or light box, and done like this. And then the pencils were approved by the editor and the art director. And in the 80s, it was an editor. They probably looked at it, and all the other artists looked at it, and they were like, "Yeah, this is a good page, or this is solid. We like this, or maybe fix this or fix that." And then it went back into the light boxing stage, and they either did one of two things. They handed over to the inker with some notes to say, please, like, adjust knee or whatever's, or they just trusted the inker at that time to fix up any mistakes that they pick up in the pencils, and then they just approved it once it was done. And also the Stalker thing, it makes a lot of sense to me, actually, because it points inwards into the composition, and as you can see, it points into the three characters in the front, and also the characters on the right kind of... Yeah,
it definitely points into the three characters.
It definitely does.
Stalker's just wasted three of the kind of crucial members of G.I. Joe.
And the thing is,
I want to be in charge.
I'm willing to wager as well that if you had to switch Stalker around, like flip him over, it would actually hurt the balance of that page. It wouldn't look as nice visually, because there's a nice shape that's happening there at the bottom of the page. It's like a cool kind of boomerang shape that kind of encapsulates all those characters. So you've got the little green shirt from the right, with Hawk being the apex of that, and then all the way to the left with Stalker being, the far left shape of the boomerang that's kind of cut off, but it looks good. It's a nice shape. It's a nice sort of delta shape. It's a bit off center, which is nice as well. So there's some clever, it's just old advertising tricks, really, to get people's attention on the book, on the cover. It's for me, it's not like my favorite cover. I'm not dissing the cover, but it's not my favorite cover. But I imagine this had quite an impact on shelves. And I imagine that because of the kind of story that was contained within the pages, that they wanted the cover to be kind of generic.
Misleading.
Good. Yeah. So that it's not just like trying to tell us what's in the book. Because that was also, that's kind of the Marvel thing, is that covers used to, or Marvel and DC, the covers used to sort of hint at what was inside the book. And I know DC used to do this really irritating thing where they would actually have text on the book like, will the Joker kill Batman this time? Or something stupid like that. I used to hate that shit. But DC used to always do that. Or, what's happening in Robin's pants? And mystery book. So Marvel used to also kind of do that as well, but Marvel, I've always found, tries to use these kind of little hints, like, like that famous Spider-Man cover, like Spider-Man No More, where he's got the Spidey suit in the trash and he's walking away. That tells a story about what's inside the comic. And That's just one issue that comes to mind, for example. So this is very generic, you know.
An
It's
easy
very-
fix would have just been not to have muzzle flash on his gun.
Yeah, that as well. But the muzzle flash is what helps to point it. Did they mess up the coloring on Stalker's left leg, or is it just me? Yes, it's inverted.
Swapped.
Yeah, it's brown pants with green stripes on that side.
Gaz has just picked up a micro detail on the artwork, which is very impressive. Well done, Gaz. But yeah, I never noticed. But yes, the camera pattern on Stalker's left leg is like a base color of brown with green splotches on top of the brown, as opposed to what it should be, which is green with brown on top. Wow.
I love that you got this.
Detailed. I don't know if we can go through the entire comic book in this fashion, boys.
No, I don't think we should.
We're
I think that
definitely
would be ridiculous.
Every page of painting.
But I'm so glad that you zoomed in on this, because I've just been inspired by
Stalker's
something.
crotch.
No, man.
Hell yeah.
You know, and it's even shadowed there as to not intimidate the reader. But I love on Snake Eyes' leg here, the highlight that's on the leg, that because of the printing process of the 80s, it's got a serious dot gain. So it's got that, because that's not zip. The shadow on the leg on the right-hand side, that's zip. I'm sure that's zip. Zip is transfer dots that you rub onto the page. So that's not, and that's what you used to do to create gray tones. But the highlight on the left is just giving me a cool idea for like artworks going forward. And I love that, that sort of Moya pattern is happening with the dots there. Anyway, that's just a personal Paul observation.
I'm pleased that we're not down on that cover, because a lot of people are like, it's too generic to really speak to me. It's not a great summation of what happens in the issue. But there's some old school retro GI Joe appeal there. It's like nobody really knows where this is going, so this is totally appropriate as like a kind of a generalist approach to what GI Joe is. It's hugely patriotic with that faded Old Glory stars and stripes in the background, bombs bursting in the air to kind of evoke the national anthem, and GI Joe is there, man, charging into danger, guns blazing. Brilliant.
Well, yeah, it's
very
perfect
heroic
for,
stuff.
for a very early issue in a run. It kind of still grabs your attention on the shelves, on the racks.
So exactly, man, and it's a great eye catcher. Also, and this is important for me, when I first got this graphic novel, and I was, you page through it, you sort of thumb through it, and you're going through the things. I remember, like, I don't remember seeing the cover, but I remember going straight to the page where we see old dude's face over here, old Wingfield's face.
Shall we move on to page one? Let's do it.
Boom. And I remember going, I'm not in the mood for this. And then I sort of skipped that comic. I skipped that whole issue. And I did it a few times until like I read it properly a couple of years back. I do this thing. Sometimes it's motivated by Steven when he comes in, when he used to come to Joburg. Sometimes you would come and borrow my graphic novels, before you had these nice digital versions and stuff to go through. And then that would sometimes inspire me to pick up a book and then just go through them and read and grab a random issue here and there and go through the graphic novel. And then I actually read this, and I was like, oh my word, this issue is special because, firstly, I feel like this is the first time they're experimenting with, let's not make Cobra the enemy. Okay, like, let's have something that we feel is maybe a real threat, and maybe a real threat that could be created by a comic book like this. Like, I actually feel that foresight was there when they wrote this book, when Larry Hama did this, and when the editorial team got together in the bullpen and they were figuring this out. I think any mentions of Cobra in this book are actually shoehorned in there. I don't think that was the original idea. I think it was purely to say extremism in any form is bad. And something that's interesting about this issue is that, can you guys think of any other books in the line that deal with this kind of thing, especially in the original ARAL run? Like,
what paramilitary organizations? You got me on the spot, Paul. I'm pretty sure they're out there, but this is kind of the most notable one, and it happens while the comic book is in its infancy. Yep. It's an interesting left turn. When you could be establishing Cobra as a villain Instead, you leave Cobra kind of in amber, as it were. Like, there's no need to further the Cobra story. Let's point G.I. Joe at another threat. Because G.I. Joe is something special. They're not like traditional armed forces who deal with external threats. This is something that, like, the CIA would be involved in, or the FBI. Like, this is a kind of a domestic threat, which is something that, strictly speaking, the military should not be involved in dealing with. A paramilitary organization, yeah, man, this is scary, and it speaks to the world we live in, actually. It was true of the 80s. It seems almost truer now. Like, we're living in a shadow of, like, a time when the White House was occupied.
Yep.
So
it's scary stuff.
It's topical. They didn't have nuclear weapons, fortunately.
Thank God.
But Vance's Strike First initiative is different to most paramilitary organizations in one key aspect, and that's the fact that when domestic paramilitaries in the United States are all about protecting America against terrorists, both within and without the United States, these guys are accepting assistance from terrorists.
Like, they're a new world order.
Well, he's clearly got connections to Cobra. Well, that's what's implicated in this issue. It's never fully exposed. We never see any Cobra agents skulking about making deals with the Strike First lunatics. But there are really high-tech tanks, and how it's explained that they have nuclear weapons, well, Cobra. So these guys are not against making deals with the devil to further their aims.
Well, I suppose that's true of any like terrorist organization or paramilitary organization, really. I mean, the ends justify the means, usually.
Is a domestic sort of paramilitary organization going to accept arms from ISIS? That's the equivalent in our world.
Well, I mean, that's the...
That's not going to happen, surely. Maybe it would.
We don't know. We're not part of paramilitary organizations, so we can only speculate.
They've got enough guns. They don't need to accept any from foreign terror groups.
Well, the thing that's interesting, I mean, like, this book is also very clever in that it knows that it's treading on some dangerous ground. So firstly, as I mentioned earlier, the Cobra thing has been shoehorned in. And the reason I feel so strongly about that is because Larry Hama has, and we know this from the silent issue, Larry Hama comes from that old school style of comic book paneling and storytelling where a reader should be able to know what's going on just by looking at the panels without having to read the speech bubbles. And that's I've always found that to be like incredibly good advice when it comes to creating comic books, because it's advice that's still followed today. And so there's no, as you mentioned, there's no Cobra agents, no Cobra uniforms, no Cobra symbols in this book at all, which tells me that initially they did it, and at the very end they went, wait guys, call the letterer, we need to change some of the speech bubbles, we need to add Cobra has got this, or this comes from Cobra, or whatever. Because I think somebody very important in Marvel's shareholders read this and went, no. And I think they even went as far as they could to try and make this paramilitary group look ridiculous. I mean, Ryan Sweeney just Gaz just commented now on bold choice in facial hair, and I agree with that. It's a mustache twirling villain. Okay,
pretty much.
That's pretty much right. So like that is
with aviators and an M16, which makes it a very kind of counterculture, subversive image, isn't it? He's got
exactly
the quintessential American gun and aviators to make him look like he stepped off the set of MASH. No, Chips. That one.
Chips.
That's the acronym. Yeah. It's an interesting kind of like, I don't know.
And then we got
carry on, Paul.
It's anachronistic. I don't know.
No. It hits you in the face. Like, is this the good guy, the bad guy? Should we have sympathy for his cause?
It's just really goofy. And the whole book, if you go through, like, as we go through it again, you'd have no sympathy for this. So they were very careful to write this paramilitary group in a way that doesn't evoke sympathy. You know, Cobra has an
I don't know if I
interesting.
agree with that. Like, apart from
Really?
him,
Okay.
apart
Yeah.
from Vance, the rest of his organization seemed to be like there's sympathy for the guy who flies the plane, Carruthers,
Oh,
and there's sympathy obviously for Sherry because she has the heel turn at the 11th hour, or
well,
the
let me
face turn.
rephrase. We
Like, there's
don't.
not a
We as
cabal
readers.
of baddies. It's all
Yes.
focused on this guy, this lunatic,
Yeah,
who's got
but
his finger on the button.
yeah. Let me rephrase. We don't have any sympathy for their cause, for the cause
Okay.
that's uniting these this quote unquote innocent people or victims of this kind of cult mentality. That's what I meant. Sorry, Steve. Yeah, because.
And I also,
But-
Paul, I need to just put the brakes on ever so slightly because this is the first of the ARA run to not have its plot delivered by Larry. This is a Herb
Oh,
Trimpe illustrated
Ooh, even
and
better.
plotted issue. So he had creative reins over everything. Larry came in to do the scripting. So the
Right.
words are Larry's, but everything else, the story beats, the way it's illustrated, that's all Herb.
Sweet. Sorry, I just saw Larry Hammer's script and I just figured, well, he probably wrote it anyway. Like,
Gotta be the
you know,
guy.
Which,
and
I mean,
got,
you tipped me off, Paul, to the possibility that maybe Herb had this plot, in mind for years before GI Joe was even a thing, and just looking for a vehicle to push it off into.
kind of
Maybe
feel it
GI
is
Joe
like that.
offered the perfect opportunity, or maybe he came up with it one weekend while he was on GI Joe and pitched it to Larry and said, "Larry, you take the month off. I got this one."
Oh, you never know what happens.
You've been
in the
working
book.
really
Larry
hard.
could have been sick. He could have been moving an apartment. Something could have happened. So, like, there's always a plan B with these things, and this was the plan B book. But maybe this book was even like considered before the run even started as, well, let's consider different villains. For GI Joe. Like, let's not just have Cobra. What other villains can we have for GI Joe? So let's try a paramilitary group. And see how that flies. And maybe we'll have different paramilitary groups throughout America, that are being funded by Cobra or something,
Well, up until
As an
about
idea.
issue 12, it was always Monster of the Week stuff. So those initial issues can be read in any order. There's no issue-to-issue continuity.
Yeah, they
I lied.
syndicated.
There's the obvious exception. There's a two-parter. I forget. The stuff in Afghanistan with the October Guard. That stuff is a handover. But yeah, if you take that as one story arc, that can be shuffled to any point in the order as well, within the first 12 issues.
Also, there's like, and if we go into page 2, just because I think the viewers of the YouTube channel might get a bit bored of seeing this man's face, we get to this cool spread here where we just see who this guy is. And I mean, clearly he's Dr. Eggman. This is before he started torturing Sonic. But this guy is like immediately like slaps you in the faces. This is a cult leader. This is like, Mr. Kool-Aid cult himself. It's very, very hectic. Like the words that he used, the first file by the numbers, proceed downrange, taking evasive action on the double, move out. He's like pretending to be a military guy. He's not speaking with the same kind of authority that we've seen the Joes speak with, when they go through things. Because we had a little bit of a, the Joes, military chatter before this. We also have the guy that gets shot in the leg because he's just like, this guy's exerting his power like a total bully. And, then he turns around and he goes, no, we knew the risks when he joined. He's just going to have to make do with field dressing and some aspirin. It's like, no, dude.
Rub some dirt in it.
Yeah, it's like, don't be a hardcore asshole. Like, and that should tell you that this guy is full of abuse. So these people, they're not cool with this shit. They just accept it. Like, they're drinking the Kool-Aid already with this guy. And that's also another thing that I think was very bold for them to put into this comic book is this kind of cult mentality. I feel like in a lot of ways, this is kind of like a slice of, Cobra is really bad, but the real world is actually worse. We just want to remind you about that, and also remind you that Cobra is a terrorist organization in case you guys have any thoughts about that or misgivings about that. and I feel like it's even more poignant now if I've read some of Larry Harmer's Facebook posts where he has actually said it always surprises me when people come up to him and tell him how much they love Cobra and stuff like that. I'm paraphrasing people. I know it's a lot more than that, but he tried his best to try and make Cobra seem like real villains. So, yeah. Rob, I'm curious on your thoughts, man. I haven't heard anything from you.
Well, I was very curious that we were actually going to do an entire episode about this. Like, I'm silently listening to you, convincing me why we need a whole episode for this issue. I mean, it's a fascinating issue. I quite enjoyed it, but yeah, it is kind of like an anomaly in the run of GI Joe, where you're not focused on the fight of GI Joe versus Cobra. But I do enjoy it. I mean, it's even from just the second page, there is cool foreshadowing, especially from like the wife, where she is a bit like down on like what her husband is doing right now. Like, you don't have to use live fire. They've only been here for a week or so, but like, it can kind of, there's a bit of pushback from her. And I like that through the scripting, you do have an idea that there's a possibility, if you're paying attention, there's a possibility of what she's going to be doing later in the issue, where she kind of like fully turns on her husband. But it's cool as well, because especially early on, you do get kind of the setup of like, why are these guys, you don't know why they necessarily are so willing to do what they're doing, but very soon we're going to get the reason for why they are drinking the Kool-Aid, as it were, so easily, because they have their families there too. This guy encourages the people to bring their entire families with them to this retreat. And
that's what Cobra does as well, So
yeah, so it just But overall, it's a very interesting issue, and I'm glad we are actually taking a deeper look into it.
And on the next page, Steve, like, this is absolute art. I love this. It's so clever. I love this transition. We got the side of his head. We're going deeper in, then we see a shadow, and then we got a call for the lights to switch on. It is so cinematic. I love that transition. And that's another thing I love about this issue in particular. This could be a movie. This could be maybe a GI Joe live action, TV series. This could be the first 3-parter, the first pilot, before we even introduce Cobra. This could have been
it could be done on a very tidy budget. I mean, apart from the aerial stuff, which if you're really tight, you could do as just radio work. Yeah. Hawk's kind of on the radio. I've got Carruthers in sight. Trying to down the B-29. But yeah, this all happens in one camp. A little bit of action, a little bit of espionage, a little bit of fisticuffs. I mean, it's brilliant. It's a bottle episode. Yeah.
It's so cool. It is so cool. And I can't believe how much I love this issue. Like, I kick my younger self. Yeah, sorry. I mean, I'm apologizing, but I'm actually not sorry. It's cool to find something like this. It just it feels like such a diamond in the rough for me. And as we go through this book, I mean, just the page, like I said, the page layouts and stuff are fantastic. They're just really well done. They're very cinematic for me. I also love the next shot where we have Hawk talking, and then and it's cool because it's like, let's go. I want your gear packed and ready to get in 10 minutes. And then as we get to let out, and it's like he's there in the camp, and it's like, it's such a good transition. And then there's like little things like a visual match. And then later on, I think a lot of ideas for what Cobra could be on a grand scale was sort of, borrowed from ideas that came into the creation of this issue as well, because bringing in the families is like bringing the families into Springfield. You got Springfield, a lovely little town, and you got all the Cobras and Crimson Guards and all that stuff living there, and they have their families there. And obviously Cobras, using surveillance and all kinds of crazy stuff on them as well. And they're also like in a sort of cult-like mindset, and they're also very McCarthyist, where, they're calling out on everybody's behavior around them. And it's very, very cool. And I feel like that's there. And then also this footage comes from an FBI agent. So if we are to read between the lines, that FBI agent was either killed or something, because how
Mhm.
did this guy not know he was infiltrated by an FBI agent? Surely he would have seen his numbers drop and things like that. So if he wasn't killed, then he managed to get out, and it shows you this guy isn't as disciplined, or his military doesn't quite have the discipline that it should have, which also again shows why he's paramilitary. He doesn't have true military discipline going through it. There's no honor system going through there. It's fear. Sorry, Steve, you wanted to say something and I completely steamrolled you.
Oh, I just figured if someone had been murdered in this camp, then there would probably be less of a clandestine infiltration. Like they would be able to legitimately make arrests and
That's
conduct
true, actually.
investigations. So no, I think everything's kind of above board at this point. Like it is enshrined in the Constitution of the United States of America that you can bear arms. So these guys are just, flexing their constitutional rights to have a camp in the woods with lots of guns.
And then I love, like, as we get into the page with the training, and you've got this guy talking, and so you got, and this is a great contrast that happens in this page. It's Grunt talking to Hawk, and he's got the entire camp is enclosed by hurricane fencing, topped with barbed wire, etc., etc. But the cool thing is, there's a reinforced guard tower at every corner, and another one, and then it's just like that you pace off the intervals between the floodlight masts. That's very cool, because that is like, okay, yes, you're working out distance based on your own movements, on your pace, on your gait and things like that. That's actually quite smart. That you can hear. That's like that's military experience that Larry's got, that is come into this, and then it's juxtapositioned by this guy, like a real clown, going, move out, pretending to be all soldier, and he's like, keep it moving, stop while being exposed like that, and fire, and you're going to be dead. It's like, yes, he's right. It's just the way that those lines are delivered, and maybe I'm making too much of a thing out of it here, but it does feel like somebody playing Army, and it does read that way, and it's clever, and I want to believe that Larry scripted it that way, to make it feel that way, to make it feel like this guy's a complete cheeseball, so that anybody who's actually served and been in the service reads this and goes, yeah, this guy's a cheeseball, At least that's my feeling. I don't know. Am I reading into this too much, guys?
I'd be curious to see what veterans would make of this kind of instruction. Like, I feel like it evokes all the cheeseball, if you want to call it that, drill instructors we've ever seen portrayed in the media. But within those portrayals, there must be a sliver of truth. I'd wager that there's a lot of like resonance to real drills from Mr. Wingfield.
Well, this whole like don't stop to help your buddy crap.
Yeah,
that's absolute bullshit, because that's not how it works.
His floundering will draw fire. Look, we might not know the ugly side of these kind of tactics.
This is also true.
It's a sacrifice of someone who's already perhaps injured, and that might save the unit. Like, I don't know.
Okay, so this is something, and I'm going to make an interesting parallel for you guys. In Karate Kid, okay, there's this, and it does relate to this issue. He's got strike first on his hat in the opening page. In Karate Kid, it's strike first, strike hard, no mercy. Okay, and that is Cobra Kai, exactly, and that is the whole situation there is, this is a guy now who has been in the military, and he has, for all intents and purposes, been, let's just say, I don't want to say abused by the military, but that was like the biggest moment in his life and the biggest, strongest moment in his life. So he's carrying that through, and he's carrying it into the training with these students and things like that. And that's interesting, because that has served him, and he's got a very strong way of doing it. But if I look at like
credentials, though, wouldn't it be ironic if he actually never served?
No, he does. Hey? What? You mean Wingfield? Yeah. I don't think Wingfield has served, personally.
Okay.
That's a feeling I get. That's actually what I'm getting at. It's like, I don't think he's actually served.
And so that's why he's putting on this whole hardcore machismo act, to drum up this drama for his people. Because, like, if I look at my training in my school, for example, we do have that, but we joke about it. We are joking with it, We're very playful with the whole, being hard thing. But when it comes to pushing and motivating a student, we push and motivate the student, And we've actually had guys in our school that were ex-military, and they used to also do crazy stuff like close all the doors and windows and then make people and switch on the aircon or the heaters on in the class for guys to do low altitude training and stuff like that, because they were just being doses. But the thing is, but these guys, they were in the military and they did stuff like that because that's how they knew training and whatever's. But it was never like, they weren't serious. They weren't like sitting here like some kind of organization telling these like kids who are essentially learning kung fu, like, listen, you're gonna die, like you're gonna die in the street, like the enemy has no mercy, like all those kind of shit. Like they would just be like funny about it, be like, hey, listen, this is something we did in the military, you guys might enjoy it, so that's what we're gonna do today, so enjoy, pucker up, buttercups, kind of thing, and go. And it's interesting to see the juxtaposition there. It's like these are people that have really served. And okay, mind you, I just want to put a disclaimer out here. South African military in the early 90s and 80s, those dudes were a bit nuts, eh? I'm not saying it, there's no disrespect. Those guys are a bit nuts. And I think, so please don't judge the military South Africa based on that little story or something that I've mentioned there. But yeah, it's just this thing that as I'm reading this book, I'm seeing this guy's just a complete clown. He's just making shit up. He's just, he's got this control. He's obviously being played by somebody much bigger than him. And this is where it opens up the doors once again for Cobra. He's got this old military hardware as well. And then we get to something that I also think is quite interesting. And it's something that's very, very rare in the entire GI Joe run. And it's on page 6, Steve, which is Snake Eyes. And we actually hear Snake Eyes' thoughts.
Very elegant handwriting, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, it's got great penmanship. Yeah, and I love his turning.
Carries through to the final issue of the run as well.
Yes,
it's very difficult to read.
The interesting thing is,
it close up a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. I listen. I think it's very good penmanship. I think the pretending part there's a bit of a whoopsie. But he's making notes, and he's making his notes in cursive, so go Snake Eyes.
Making his notes for what purpose? To serve as evidence after the fact? Because, like, who's going to have time to read this? I mean, they very cleverly kind of write in a bit of a backdoor that the three men compare notes when they meet up later. But I'm like, honestly, did Grunt and Hawk, like, pour over Snake Eyes' written notes? Let's have a little read.
I think this is purely like Deus Ex Machina kind of thing. Or
it's absolutely just for our benefit. And it's a lovely technique, but if you think about it too hard, you're going to lose your mind, because
of course
it doesn't have any real practical usefulness.
The one thing that it does serve, that it does inform me about, is how observant Snake Eyes is. How, for example, he can tell that Hawk and Grunt are holding back. Observed Hawk and Grunt pretending to be clumsy and slow in a most unconvincing manner, and it shows you that he has a very high standard for deception, which comes from either his Arashikage training, which I imagine it does, because ninja training and martial arts is actually about deception. Make no mistake. Or maybe it comes from his basic. And I don't know how the American military are trained. I've never been in the American military, but I imagine that there's some level of, being smart about how you carry yourself.
It does alter our perceptions of Snake Eyes from being this almost mythical, spectre-like character who's sort of able to do incredible feats of, like, physical action. And the fact that he's mute has always kind of almost diminished his intelligence on the page, because he doesn't have anything complex to add. Like, other characters can express themselves with complex thought. Snake Eyes does a few hand gestures and someone kind of interprets that as a very kind of basic thought. But here we see him at, like, his highest level of functioning. And we see that this man, this mystery, this legend, he's got an insightful tactical mind.
Mm.
You know, he knows about B-29s and that they are well within nuclear strike capabilities. He times cutting of the fence with the highest levels of nocturnal insect noise. Like,
I love
this is
that.
ridiculous amounts of detail to be putting into a journal, but it does add. I mean, at this point, it's transcending being a journal. It's more like narration of the illustrations. It's giving the reader a little bit more information on what they're looking at, which is
And
a
I
lovely.
love that it's not a thought bubble.
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's diegetic in a sense. We're reading his notes.
Mm.
It's in.
Also,
it's
again,
not, yeah.
sorry.
Again.
No. I was just going to say, just beautiful page layouts, but just to add to what you're saying.
Well, I guess there is some magic in having the book be a kind of an auteur book. You know, when Larry gets to do the silent issue where he's responsible for the breakdowns and the layouts and the script, well, not the scripting, the plot, the same thing is evident here as early as issue 4. Like, Herb is the master storyteller here. All the layouts are something born firmly in mind by the artist. There's no external, I suppose, input. He has
Meddling.
complete control over how he tells the story, which is, it's lovely to see that kind of mastery. Really, really, really good. It's a tribute to how good that guy was.
And also, like, and that's just in this page here, we've got the Snake Eyes is now in the roof, in the sort of attic-y kind of section of the roof. I don't know what that's actually called, so apologies. But, you know, he says, our very will to survive and all our efforts to that end have roused the ire of the powers that be. They're spying on us even now, conspiring to stamp us out. And this is why I feel like, again, this contradicts what I was saying earlier. Like, maybe he's not in that much control and he doesn't actually know what's going on. But here it sort of alludes to the fact that he is aware that the FBI and things have been here. So maybe, you know, maybe he's got people that are in the FBI or in the CIA or in whatever intelligence agencies existed at that time that we don't know about that were, you know, plants for him that were feeding him this information, saying, hey, listen, dude, you're being watched. You know, you are being observed. You have to move up your timetable. Or maybe it's Cobra that's feeding him that information. It's implied that it's Cobra. I
think at all junctures, in order to kind of root this as a GI Joe book, we have to assume Cobra is kind of agitating him. It would serve Cobra's purposes quite well to initiate war between the superpowers, because that would leave it sort of a new world for Cobra to then seize control of. Because at this stage of the writing, it's not clear that Cobra have their headquarters within the United States. Like, Cobra has undersea bases and they have bases on islands. So they are very much an external threat at this point. I mean, maybe Larry had it in mind that he was going to set Cobra domestically, but it hasn't happened in the pages of the book at this point. So, as I say, a world war between the Soviet Union and the United States in this kind of early stage of the book would serve a proto-Cobra very well. They'd kind of claim the ashes, I guess.
Yeah, and that's what makes it, once again, that's kind of what makes it a good movie plot as well for me. Like, the stakes are there. It's almost a little James Bondian as well in that respect. But the other thing,
low budget James Bond. Like I said, this all plays out in one camp. Brilliant.
And I think it's cool, man. So, I mean, everybody knows I think it's cool, but it is cool, and I'm loving it. And the other thought here is, I know that the jugglers weren't conceived as a plot device until a little bit later in the run, but it could also be the jugglers. You know, I mean, if you wanted it now, knowing what we know and looking back in hindsight, and, you know, adding lore and whatever, the way the Star Wars guys do. A part of me also feels like it could have been the jugglers. That's just future fan. This is future fan who's read all the books, you know. Looking back at this and going, oh yeah, it could have also actually been the jugglers. It didn't necessarily have to be Cobra. But then trying to let readers of The Real American Hero know that the Real American Hero's real enemy is really American. So there's also that's quite scary. So, but it is a thought, you know, it is something that went through my mind. I was like, could be the jugglers as well. And then we're just seeing some of the hardware and nothing too crazy here. But also, again, here's some like cool tactics here discussed with him, because this is once again how we know that this guy is ruling through fear, ruling through methods of control and all that, and not using a system, an honor system or a brother band system or anything like that. He intentionally doesn't want them to pick up arms in case one of them is a traitor and turns arms against him. That's in the following page. He actually says, like, don't, the arms are stored, they're locked. Cadre leaders, have your troops fall out silently and don't issue weapons. Our perimeter is too secure for this to be anything but an inside job. So he knows he knows he can't trust his own people. Again,
he's a very complex character. He's a very complex character, which I think is quite cool. That definitely comes across. He's smart, but he's also exceptionally paranoid. He's not terribly well versed in obviously military stuff. You guys have established that quite effectively, comprehensively.
I'm not sure. I'm not convinced at that point, to be honest. I'd like to think that he is a veteran. Makes it that much more subversive, and that is a real danger, that these paramilitary groups have got veterans in their number who know about weapons and explosives, who are actually a legitimate threat, not just a bunch of civvies playing cowboy for the weekend.
Well, I think that says a lot about the military service, the way that they do their best to get the best people into the armies of America. You don't accept anyone into these units.
Well, some might argue with you on that one, but you're right. There is supposed to be a standard,
There's a certain standard, and then you kind of weed these guys out much earlier, so they don't actually get the full training that you would get, to actually harm your own people. So it could be that maybe not a veteran, but like a dropout. And he kind of took that.
These could be veterans who, when they rotated back to domestic life, became disillusioned with the direction the government was going in, the direction the world was going in, and thought, no, my skills are better served carving out a new world order. So I'm going to join these guys. There's a lot of disillusionment amongst people returning from the armed service and not liking what they see. Anyway,
certainly enough. Yeah,
we're talking about toy line and a comic book. I don't want to address the ills of society.
Yes, I know, and that's such a great point that you brought up there now as well, because I think that is ultimately why Marvel and the writers of GI Joe didn't go too hard in this kind of direction moving forward with the book, because the world was shit enough already. I think it was more fun, and I agree with the decision. Ultimately, I think it was more fun. To make it about Cobra, to make it about something that is larger than life, villainous to the core, and really fun to shoot at, instead of having...
At the same time, though, Paul, you must acknowledge that Larry's G.I. Joe has always been critical, at least had an undercurrent of criticizing politicians, big business, suits, and the military-industrial complex as well. Like the Joes are oftentimes called upon to do things they don't want to do because people with the will but not the nerve to do it themselves have ordered them.
Yep, the people with the pens, and
also don't forget why it focuses on Cobra is because that's what the toys are.
Of course,
this is an advertisement for toys in the end, and I think
that is
obviously
true.
the early parts of the run are very experimental, kind of feeling their feet, where they're going. But ultimately it's an advertisement for kids' toys. So of course you're going to focus on Cobra more and flesh them out even more. But it's nice to be able to have an opportunity to kind of see like what other ills and evils there are in the world of G.I. Joe.
Can we just have a minute and address Grunt's superhuman strength?
Yes.
He seems to have it a lot though.
Well, in the previous issue it was Steeler. But
was that Steeler?
And Steeler, like, as we addressed in the Trojan Gambit, I don't think deadlifting the weight that Steeler had to deadlift to open those doors is particularly impressive if you crunch the numbers. But anyway, I'll step off that point and just address
picking a person up.
Grunt it looks
Yeah.
like he's thrown a punch almost. I know he's picked the person up like
But then
by
he
the
throws
neck and the butt and throws him, but like it looks like a punch that Spider-Man would make to kind
Yeah.
of clear a room full of thugs. It's that
very
kind of
superheroic.
superheroic, like
That bowling
physical
punch.
action. It's got
Yeah.
like speed lines. The background is kind of issued to make just a white page with like yellow, like energy almost.
Energy. It's like, yeah, it's like it's a strike. It's a bowling. You know, it's like all the pins, all the skittles
So-
all over the place. Yeah.
There is still opportunity for comic book artists to flex their like superhero comic training in
Oh, and I
G.I.
wouldn't
Joe.
want it any other way.
It works.
Wouldn't want it any other way. It would be so
Mm,
boring.
It's,
And
it's the Marvel way, isn't it? To just make
Yeah,
it overt.
and just coming back to his strength, have any of you guys lifted another human being above your head before?
Not recently.
No, not recently.
I've lifted ballerinas. I don't know if they count as human beings.
Yeah, because they're like really thin. Have any of you guys thrown another person before? And not using their body weight, like literally picking up somebody like this, lifting them over your head or up
Well,
to
I know
your,
where
like,
you're going, and absolutely not. It's like that is insane.
It's cock hard, let me tell you. Okay? It is
Paul's
shit
definitely
hard.
tried.
No, not tried. We've done it once in a class. It was done to actually show us that, like, listen, don't try to be superhumans and pick people up. It doesn't work. And we were we were drilled with this, and it's worse when somebody bigger than you picks you up and throws you. So that was the other side of the drill. So this sucks. This whole bottom section of this page, it's a lot of ow. Okay, and yeah, Grunt is one strong human being. My God, go Grunt.
He's a proper grunt.
And
Go
Shane,
grunt.
dude,
They name drop an erroneous tank that you know, these are the like hot new tanks that Ivan doesn't give their best buddies, like the tanks that Grunt and Hawk find to kind of tip them off that Cobra's sponsoring the Strike First initiative. That tank doesn't exist. I Wikipedia'd that number, and well, it does exist. It's a tank. It's a very rudimentary Second World War tank, very shitty tank. Yeah, Hawk says these are Russian T-60Es, state-of-the-art in tank technology. Like the T-60, as I say, that's a World War II tank, and it's if you ever Google it, it's not very impressive. So I think this is going a little bit off-piste, perhaps. They could have like set the number a lot higher. Like these are T-85s.
Ah, 2000s. T2000s.
Little nitpick there, but yes.
and then
Snake.
like, I don't want to labor too much of the action sequences and stuff that happen later. But I mean, we've got Snake Eyes doing what Snake Eyes does best, sneaking up on people and, you know, choking them out and sending off messages. And we got Grunt doing a cool little commando role here behind a rock while he's, you know, drawing fire, and Snake Eyes is climbing on the roof. And it's all good times. And then, yeah, we start getting a bit closer to the, you know, to the family. So this is one that's really interesting, is they like start arming the children, you know, like start giving the children guns. And this is where it starts getting like very Waco, and that, you know, now they're going to use the kids and give them guns so that if the military, or in GI Joe, if in GI Joe's case, if GI Joe draws fire upon these people, these combatants, because they've got guns in their hands now, they've essentially opened fire on children. So that gives this guy even more, for lack of a better word, ammo against the government and to sort of fuel his cause in the eyes of others. So that's kind of a thing. And also because he's a
very
coward.
smart tactical. Yeah, he's a coward, but
Yeah.
it's also a smart tactical move for a coward to make.
Yeah, well, it's a
So
typical.
he's actually very smart. He's a very smart guy, but I mean, delusional
Cunning.
at the same time.
Cult leaders are like that, my dude. They sick. Sorry, like I'm very like into. As you guys know, I find the whole
You're
cult
into
thing very
cults.
fascinating. Yeah, just because I've known people that have been in one, and
Wow.
I know one in particular recently that was in one, and that person has sort of, well, they reintegrating into society. It's quite interesting, but I don't want to go into that too much. And then we got this cool flying scene, and I love that we're reminded that Hawk is a pilot.
Hell
Is he though? I think this is
He
more
is.
a case of like, let's assume Hawk's a pilot because his codename's Hawk. Come on. But nowhere in his
must be a
file
pilot.
card does it make mention of aircraft training. And not only aircraft training, jet training,
Jet training.
but vintage jet training.
Oh, he's
Like-
the best of the best, man.
I really enjoy Mover Ruins movies. C.W.
Yes.
Lemoyne, who is a United States pilot, military pilot, who, when
Yeah,
commenting
from the F-18.
on Top Gun Maverick, saying like, how the hell does Rooster know what to do with an F-14? Because unless you have very specific training in what all those buttons, dials, knobs do, like it is a very manual readout. It's a very analog plane in a digital world. So if you're trained in the sort of the digital era of flying, like how to even start one of those planes is stupefying. Good thing he had Maverick along, but like Maverick didn't exactly have to give him a briefing. It's like, you know what to do, dude. Run around the plane, climb up there. Anyway, my point is, Hawk climbs into an F-86 Sabre. Amazing aircraft from like the Korean War era. In fact, this is shortly after World War II. These things kind of started becoming what went into development. This is a plane from the 1950s, right?
Isn't it one of the first supersonic fighters?
It could go supersonic in a dive, but it wasn't built to be supersonic.
Yeah.
So if you're conjuring up images of this plane in your head, it doesn't have a fully swept wing. It's a sort of a more graceful sweep. It looks like, I suppose, just a prop-driven plane's wing, but reversed. So it's got a more gradual sweep. It's got a big open intake in the nose, so it doesn't have a pointed nose. It's got
fairly reminiscent of a MiG.
Well, the MiG and the MiG-15 and the F-86 Sabre were enemies in the Korean War. They were the kind of the classic matchup. It's got 650 cals in the nose. Fortunately for Hawk, they were all fully loaded. However, the radio
and the plane was fueled.
Plane was fueled up and ready to go. What else can we
that
say
plane
about
was
the
getting
F-86?
made.
I was thinking about this the other day. Like the B-29 and the F-86 would have seen service in the Korean War. And the Korean War was essentially 30 years before this comic book issue. But in service today, there's a plane, a bomber, the B-52, which was around since the 50s. So that is a 70-year-old plane? So like all of a sudden, if you put that into perspective, these planes ain't that old.
Yeah.
Like the F-86 would have probably left service in the 70s. So that's just 10 years before this. I mean, Hawk might have been, if he did do pilot training, he might have indeed been flying the F-86. It's conceivable.
Yeah. Very much so. That's the
inconceivable, however,
is how fast it is.
No, it's fast. It's certainly going to be able to catch that B-29 if Hawk had an accurate heading for it. I mean, it's a big open sky, pal.
No radio.
Luckily, Carruthers followed the coastline. So he's flying towards the coast from Montana and then up towards Canada. Like he's following the coastline before then flying across the ocean. The problem, however, I did crunch the numbers. The B-29's range to get from like the most western border of Montana to Vladivostok, that's a real stretch. I would wager that like unless you have some very favorable tailwinds, you're not going to make it. However, you're definitely not going to make it if you first fly north and then fly west. So this plan, look, it was always going to be a one-way trip for old Carruthers. I don't know if people necessarily reading this comic book would realize that it's a suicide mission for him. That's why he's kind of a grim character. Like he's going to basically drop the bomb, run out of fuel, and then crash into nuclear wasteland.
Yep.
Yeah. And maybe it was just going to be a kamikaze drop.
once again, very dark overtone for this book, and something that really stands out as quite, significant in the
But
run.
since he was never going to make it anyways, it's all moot. I mean, he didn't have the range to make that trip.
You could almost argue that him not making it is almost worse because he's got a nuclear payload. Like, I mean,
he's
okay,
one man alone flying a very complex vintage bomber with a very complex weapon on board and doing all the navigation himself, like superhuman. It makes for great comic book reading, but honestly, he needed a crew.
yeah, agreed. And on the next page, on the, I think it's page 17, 16 or 17? Yeah, 17. There's this panel, there's 2 panels in here, 3 panels in here I absolutely love. The one
Because
I
it's
think would make
Roy Lichtenstein.
It's very Roy Lichtenstein. In fact, I love that rat-a-tat-tat-tat with the guns from the F-86. Dude, that is a t-shirt. I just think that's so cool. And then that shot with the plane sort of going down and Hawk's like, jump, Carruthers, jump,
Jump
I love that
into
shot.
the middle of the Atlantic. Not the Atlantic. This is like... What sea is this? I know it would be the Pacific, but we're far
Red
north
Sea.
of that.
And these clouds are so beautifully rendered. I actually want to do studies on these clouds. Anyway, that shot of the plane going down, it's so cool. I love the shapes there and how the lines sort of intersect with each other. It's a very once again, this issue is so cinematic. And I can really see that on widescreen playing out so slowly with this like very sad kind of music, this like, like these minor chords coming like very
As the plane
kind of
heels over and descends into the ocean. Well, if you know Herb like I know Herb, you know that he loves drawing planes. I think he made his first jobs as an illustrator was drawing schematics for aircraft. I think. Maybe not speak out of turn here, but like, yeah, you can see it in the way he renders the B-29 at all angles and the F-86 at all angles. Like, he has a innate understanding of these shapes. Perhaps he had models of each to work off of.
I'm sure he did. If he was a plane enthusiast, he probably did have a lot of models. And there's some good design just artistically on the plane itself. I mean, I know that people argue that the panels aren't correct or whatever, but I do like the artistic sort of use of the lines to break up any tangents and things happening there so that the plane's got a more solid form.
What is this incorrectness you speak of, Paul, for the lay person?
On the hull? No, not the hull, the fuselage. Sorry, it's a plane. On the main fuselage where the cockpit is, you got a line that splits the upper and lower section of the fuselage, and then you got these vertical lines that intersect them. And then you got these smaller little squares that sort of subdivide those lines. Like, I'm not familiar with I can't visualize this plane in my head now and see all the panel lines and things like that. But when I look at the way that it's been rendered here, he's got enough detail here to tell me that this is a real plane, that nobody was being lazy in the way that it's illustrated, and that there was some good design thinking here just to maintain the solidity of the plane's form. It's very clever.
Would have been scribe lines or panel lines all over the B-29. It's not a smooth, completely smooth cylinder. But, to find a camera that would be able to photograph them at this distance, it's impossible. Like, you just see this silver glint. But yeah, it's
nice
if it just looked like a silver cylinder, it would be far less interesting. Like, these lines make it look technical, make it look Kirby-esque, which is another Herb influence.
Yeah, well, you got that spotting of black that's happening here. That's beautiful. Anyway, we're getting into the weeds of the
inks on the F-86 during the rat-a-tat-tat-tat with this thick black bold.
Cool.
It is very cool.
So
anyways, this is
it's beautiful.
Not great radio right now. Let's talk more about plotting and less about art.
And then we got this. Sorry, you go
to me how much story is packed into this book. Because then we have the Joes arriving, the face turn from Sherry, which is, very kind of deliberately like broken up over the panel lines, to her pulling out the gun. The Joes are arriving. The gun is leveled. We don't know at what. Like, she's going to shoot the mutineers? No. She's going to shoot Wingfield in the back twice. Blam, blam. Which is... Maybe it would have been better if
With
that
a
reveal was
Springfield. Sorry,
is it?
No, it's not a Springfield. I'm being cheeky. It's just a Colt.
Yeah, Springfield, a sniper rifle. Anyways,
Yeah.
it might have been more effective on the page turn, but I mean, look, it's pretty much telegraphed at that point, perhaps, because Sherry
It's been
has,
set up for you.
Yeah. yeah.
You know,
The seed
you're
has
kind of
been
feeling the
planted.
tension. Yeah, obviously a page turner would have worked much better, but you kind of like feel the tension as you are looking through each panel, which I quite enjoy.
I read it as that she was going to open fire on the Joes initially, and then the blam happened, and I was like, wait, did she just shoot him? So it worked on me.
Yeah, but it's cool because, like as I said, it is kind of set up at the start, at the top of the story. You know, there's that little character moment where she's like, "Are you sure you should be doing this?" Like, you know, they're just people learning the ropes. You know.
And yeah, ugh. And then we got him nervously shaking now.
Sorry,
But this
I've
is
done
weird.
it
This
in
went backwards.
reverse
I'm
order.
like,
Yeah,
I was
gone
like,
back.
because we got
Yes,
like
so
nervously shaking.
Vance has the second device buried on the premises, and this was his master plan to, if
Blow them all up.
yeah, exactly, make a kind of a martyr of this organization, which speaks to his delusion because I don't think anyone would really take up their cause or make the assumption that the Soviet Union had attacked the United States. I don't know. It's pretty touch and go, hokey, spurious.
It's pretty out
justifications at this point.
But it's
like,
great. The entire issue is it's really tight. You know, like the setup, the exploration, and then the escalation of action as it goes along. It's just a really tight issue.
Nail biting. Somehow Hawk is able to redline that F-86 from Canada back to Montana. Wow.
And
It's
still
like a
has fuel.
4-hour
I'm
flight.
impressed. Like,
But the bomb, they find it, they bring it up, the time is ticking by, and we see Grunt do some superhuman lifting this time. Where did Steeler go? Did he kind of... I guess you want to play to the key characters from this issue. Grunt, Hawk, Snake Eyes. And between the three of them, it's Grunt who kind of steps up to the plate and holds the detonator, lifting it clear as Zap burns through the spokes that hold it in place. Yeah, nail-biting stuff, like a push-in of the camera into Zap's eyes as the beads of sweat roll down his forehead. The countdown. It is, you keep saying it, and I keep coming back to it, it's cinematic in its approach. This self-contained issue. It's very, very well paced and plotted. Speaks to a very kind of deliberate, okay, this is the story I'm going to tell. It's going to have no flab on either sides. It's going to be one issue, all the thrills, all the pace, all the setup, all the payoff, and then clear the slate for the next issue.
Yeah.
I kind of miss this kind of writing in G.I. Joe. Really do.
yeah.
Well, I think we're just so used to, Monster of the Week episodes where you kind of are getting to know the characters as you go along, but it's not like this super deep setup, long-term setup of stuff. Essentially, you could pick up any issue and just enjoy that as a standalone thing. It's like like CSI or Law and Order. You know, you get to know the characters, but each and every single episode is its own self-contained story.
Yeah, and also let's just like not shake too much of a. Oh, I want to say shake a stick at, but the bravery that is shown by these guys is just—it's nothing to shake a stick at, man. These guys are like. That's
I
what
would
I was
never
going
shake
with
a stick
it.
to these guys.
Yeah, no, good, don't.
I'm not
But
gonna.
like, the thing is, like, they're dealing with a nuclear device here. They removed the one plate. I mean, that thing could have been cracked or whatever. It could have been, full of radiation. They could have had radiation poison, and they just go and they just do it. And that shows you, like, that's also another difference. The GI Joes are willing to sacrifice themselves for something bigger than them, for an ideal bigger than them. And I love that that comes across in this issue as, once again, another juxtaposition to Wingfield's whole, people are self-sacrificing for a goal where it comes to hurting people, and the Joes are self-sacrificing when it comes to saving people. They understand what it means to save people. And I think that's very cool. And I think there's a great line that's here in the very end of the book, and it's, "Well, Clem, looks like they're moving in some real soldier boys up to the old Wingfield place." And that shows you that the whole area, that region knew that these guys were playing military, and weren't like for real, that they were a bunch of clowns. So,
though it's with some almost regret that the real soldier boys moving up to that place, because they're going to have the liquor prices go up. The sheriff's going to be setting up his speed trap, and you've got to keep a close eye on your women folk. It's like, oh, geez, real soldiers? that brings real problems. It's a bit of a wag of the finger at, like, I suppose, privates, recruits, and the culture that brings into a small town.
And that both sides need to be disciplined. Or when I say both sides, that discipline is an important thing. And, anyway. That was issue 4, Operation Wingfield, with a lot of depth and a lot of scrutiny and a lot of picking apart. And I'm really happy we did that.
Do I even have
the postbox, the pit? This is the first book in the ARR run to have a letters page.
I didn't actually.
Oh.
I didn't, because I read this. I actually read this issue in my graphic novel. So
very good.
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem with those graphic novels. They don't have the ads, which I delight in reading in the kind of the original comic book form, but also Postbox the Pit, such an essential part of the reading journey of an issue of GI Joe. I guess it's not possible to reproduce those letters. Maybe it's a Marvel's publishing thing. Like if it's IDW printing the book, they can only print the book. They can't print the ancillary material. But it's a nice window into the opinions of the readers at the time. And what is impressive, particularly with this letters page, because oftentimes the letters pages in these early books are just responses from kids, which is wonderful that kids are reading this. But like these letters were all written based on issue 1 and were written by what seems to be mid to late teens or even adults. Because the first letter is written by a serving member of the armed forces, congratulating the book on its like military accuracy.
Yeah, I just read it right now. It's fantastic.
What is astonishing is like issue 1 was still pretty far out there in terms of hokiness, but I guess was accurate enough for it to be in sharp contrast to what had come before. Like, perhaps comic books always got the armed forces wrong to this point, with exceptions. I think there was obviously the
movies
Sergeant
as well.
Rocks. But like this isn't S.H.I.E.L.D. This isn't guys with like jetpack belts and helicarriers. Like there's a level of groundedness to GI Joe that perhaps was refreshing in 1982. And this was part of that new wave of like stepping out of the shadow of the army being a dirty word, or the military being a dirty word from Vietnam, to like suddenly injecting some patriotism back into the service. And G.I. Joe was really leading the charge in this. And one of the letters does speak to that. It's an interesting turning point in history, and G.I. Joe was kind of at the forefront of it.
Are you referring to this slide, to this paragraph where the guy says, your series has the potential to bring back some pride in ourselves and our strength as a nation. I commend you for this worthy project and the excellent ideas behind it. And that
Bingo.
Was, beautiful. Very cool to read that. I find this quite interesting here is when this one guy from Harlem, New York says, Dear Tom, G.I. Joe 1 had it all, good scripts, blah, blah, blah. But then he gets to this 2, he gets very technical, and this is such a comic book fan thing. The Baxter paper, the book was printed on. Everybody I know who bought it was really impressed with it. I mean, with their paper, right? I mean, this is when people actually appreciated like stuff like that. It's great. And then you have a lot of possibilities with this new title. I hope you won't make Cobra an always present enemy like Hydra was in Nick Fury. And that is kind of the mistake that the book did. Well, I want to say a mistake, but sorry, dude from Harlem, New York.
Well, it's something.
Harlem,
I mean, the first guy points out too is that he hopes to see them do, say, humanitarian missions, and not just being a counter-terrorist unit, not just focusing on Cobra. But the thing is, sorry, it's a toy comic book. It inevitably will focus on its main villain. I think they definitely lost Harlan York very early, eventually.
Yeah,
I don't think he stuck
Harlan
around
York.
to read issue 300.
Yeah, I got a feeling he didn't. Maybe he's like a big banker now or something. Yeah, but anyway,
Could be.
it's cool to see like how we can relate to some of these fans as well. In the letters page, I actually feel like this should maybe be a section for an episode at one point where we go through some after we've done a few episodes of this, we actually as we go through this, I think it would be a good practice for us to earmark some letters pages that have a letter or two on them that we like, and maybe collect them for a future episode. I think that could be quite fun.
I have to admit, it was always part of my essential reading of the issue is to pore over the letters page as well, because it was fun to see what people of the time thought of the issues, and then go back to the issues.
Too. Yeah,
it's something that just doesn't happen anymore. We turn to social media. We don't write the publishers. Larry is quick to lament the fact that, like in the 80s, they had buckets of mail spilled out onto the floor that he'd go through meticulously, each and every one response, pick out a few, and put them in the letters page. And it's dwindled to like a handful of emails. Or I wouldn't be surprised if there's sometimes entire months where no one emailed IDW for GI Joe. It's entirely possible.
Well, it's just not in our culture to do it anymore. It has, because of social media, we have moved on from this kind of like speaking, as it were, through letters pages. It's a thing of the time. It's just...
But
there's a maturity.
The amount of effort that you'd have to go through to post a letter.
Yes.
Versus how easy it is to send an electronic message now. Like, how has this disappeared from our culture? It's easier than ever. The fact that someone wrote Marvel to basically just have like a couple of words. Dear editor, re G.I. Joe #1. Great. Can't wait till #2. Matt Maninario. 225 Bonswood Avenue, New York. Hey, that's all he wrote. Incredible.
You know,
I needed a postage stamp for that. Like, what? Unless he hand delivered it, which, okay, if he is in New York, perhaps he just walked to the Marvel offices and hand delivered
dropped it in their postbox. Yeah.
Amazing.
The thing is, and I've said this to Celia as well, and I'd be very curious to hear what our listeners have to say about it, and obviously I'm very curious to hear your thoughts, gents, but there is power in writing a letter. If you have an idea, for example, about something that, maybe you're working in a company or whatever, and you have this really, really great idea, or you have words and you don't want to go through all the red tape, writing a letter to a person that is in an important position will force them to read it, and they will appreciate and respect the effort that has gone into writing them a letter. It is still a very powerful means of communication. And I've actually found that, I mean, think about it, guys. If you take your significant others, for example, and you wanted to do something like romantic or special, whatever, a lot of the time, you take the time to actually write it down on a paper that you can fold up and hide somewhere, or sneak into, onto the dining room table or something as they come home and they see this letter or something, you know what I mean? You try to be like smart and whatever, but a letter is the way to go, because a WhatsApp and an email is just a throwaway thing. And that is, like you guys are saying earlier, it's so sad that people don't write letters, that they don't take the time to actually distill their opinions onto a page and really give some thought and really have that conversation with themselves in their heads. Now it's just like, I have a thought, tweet, bang, fart, it's out there, you know? And you mentioned now, like IDW probably went months without getting an email. Yeah, that's true. But they probably went for months with horrible tweets, always telling them, oh, this is so shit. Oh, I hate this. This character's hair shouldn't be brown. Oh, no. They probably just get vitriol all the time. So that's the sad thing. Letters definitely help to prevent that, or should I say mitigate it. So and that's my 2 cents on it anyway. Letters are great.
It's easy to chuck some anonymous negativity using social media. It's far less easy to like write a long form email and make it full of vitriol. You kind of will hopefully will censor yourself or mitigate your own words, make it more conversational, more something that someone will want to read in the pages of the comic book you're writing to. I have a little fun Easter egg to throw in front of your peepers, gentlemen, because on the back cover of this issue, there is a commercial for Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back video game cartridge.
No
Bring the battle home. And it depicts Imperial walkers being assaulted by, having some snow speeders zip past the Imperial walkers. It's a very exciting little sequence, cool artwork. But take a look at those snow speeders. Do they look like the film snow speeders from Empire Strikes Back?
No.
No
based
way.
on the prototypes, aren't they? That's
very good. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, big Star Wars fan.
I think those are the
Big
Ralph
Ralph
McQuarrie.
fan.
Yeah. The concepts, air speeders, they were single seaters, and the reason I know this is because in
no
the
guns
late
in the front,
'90s they did a concept series of vehicles. Does this ring any bells?
So cool. Such a cool line.
Yes.
Such cool design.
Oh, did you buy any of those?
Sadly not, because I
Man.
never saw them here, dude.
Oh, no.
Well, Rob, you will remember that airspeeder because I
do,
had
yeah.
it. Hey,
It's beautiful.
I
It's
just love
so
that
cool that
artwork,
they got around to doing that.
it's just weird to me that it exists though, because surely this video game cartridge and its associated art would have come out after the film. Like
Well,
fact
the
that they're
film
using
came out
Macquarie-
1980. This was 1982. But it could be that the promotional art and stuff that they were looking at was older.
Yeah, they just happened to use a Macquarie like pre-production sketch. Or
Yeah, and
artwork,
then just and kind of
I
just
think-
based on that. It is weird though.
So we were talking about letters earlier, right? And
Ooh, I remember.
so it depends on how close the ad agency was to the artist who did this stuff, because the artist would then render these artworks, the roughs, then and guys, I'm sorry if I'm ignorant here. I don't know if we had fax machines in the early 80s. I think we did in 82.
Sure.
Maybe we did. So maybe he went and faxed this over for approval, and
they couldn't see it properly.
and they couldn't see it properly, or he mailed through a Xerox, a photocopy, and then, you know, because it was like, oh my word, you have to get it done quickly. It was a phone call to say, oh yeah, okay, this is really good. Okay, it's fine. Just take it to final. And then, you know, the artist was probably like, okay, but I've got this concept art. And they're like, yeah, it's the right concept art, whatever. So this was a communication error, I think, because of how timelines had to be managed and how much shit had to be like logistically moved back and forth. Remember, Hasbro always had the benefit of the stuff in Pawtucket, you know, in the toy in Hasbro side, they were getting a lot of artists were kind of dealing directly with them, and then in Marvel, you know, they were at least getting like huge packages, or they were creating a lot of stuff there and then sending it off. And so I think this is just crazy management. And also,
What
guys, make Atari were shit. Like, I love Atari. Like, there's a lot of things that you need to know about Atari, and they were really shit when it came to managing stuff. I mean, they were making games, and they were forcing people to make to build these games in like 2 months, and just getting stuff happening really, really quickly all the time. It's actually why we had the video game crash in 1983. So, yeah, that's paraphrasing it in a big way. But yeah, very cool spot, Stephen. Like, I don't think I would have like just noticed that offhand. Had I just
happen
gone
to
through
have
this
the
issue.
toy, I guess, and that's where it stems for me. But look, in an era of special editions and constant tweakings of Star Wars, and like the acknowledgement that the Star Wars universe and its vehicle plethora was far vaster than like what we saw in the original trilogy. I mean, the original trilogy was limited by how many models they could hand build. Very expensive and time-consuming process, not only for design but also for the manufacture, the materials making these damn things. So maybe there were other craft used by the rebels for the Battle of Hoth. Maybe these were them, these air speeders.
Well,
it's entirely
Well,
possible.
they did say that they struggled to adapt them to the cold weather. So
is that? Also, I
Look,
kind
a
of go down the
speeder
rabbit
is a
hole.
pretty generic term. It's ubiquitous. Like, it could have been the speeders. It could have been what we know as the snow speeder, which must have just been a speeder before they adapted them to the cold. They weren't called snow speeders. They have a designation, I think, the T6, whatever, T66.
something or
I don't know.
other. It is kind of fascinating, though.
Mm.
You can fly things in space, which is like super cold. But why is it so difficult to adapt things to the cold of a planet?
Oh, dear.
Probably because of
Oopsie.
particulates in the atmosphere.
Particles. So, guys, do I even have to ask? This book obviously gets a clear 5 from all of us. I mean, we spent an entire episode talking about it. I mean,
No.
wow.
Wow.
Fascinating.
Dissenting opinion.
No, because I need to remain true to my, at least some of my initial appraisal of this issue, because we're not hoisting every issue of the original run onto a pedestal and giving its own episode.
No, obviously not.
I have to remain
the 3rd issue and the 4th issue so far.
I have to remain objectively subjective. Like when I read this initially, it didn't stand out to me, and I think it still doesn't, because it is dealing with not even an army of villains for G.I. Joe to take down. It's one crackpot who gets shot in the back by his wife. G.I. Joe's involvement in this is kind of a little bit irrelevant. It's a little bit like it could be anyone. It could be any enforcement agency. Like, this isn't a specific G.I. Joe. I don't know. My point is,
you feel like they're more effective than needed when they're fighting bigger armies. So it's the size of the army that matters.
I can't quite put a finger to it, but I feel like this is, if you look at issue number 1, that is G.I. Joe being used surgically for their precise role, the right tool for the job. I don't know if this is that. And while it has some cool character beats, and certainly seeing a bit of insight into the way Snake Eyes operates is cool, and the aerial stuff is cool, and of course the stakes, like this is the highest stakes of that early run. It's perhaps the highest stakes of all G.I. Joe. It's like nuclear Armageddon is the balance here.
Kerber just forgot they had nukes after this.
It's an elegantly... exactly. They should have just been farming them out to crackpot terrorists everywhere if this was their end goal. Someone would have pressed the button and succeeded. I guess this issue just... I mean, for all its elegance and its plotting and technical stuff that I can admire now, it's just not what I want from my ultimate favorite G.I. Joe story.
Wow.
Okay.
So it can only be a 4 out of 5 for me.
Incredible.
Which is high praise from Stephen, actually.
It is, actually. I mean,
yeah, considering that this whole series has got a very high bar, actually. 4 out of 5 is pretty strong.
I still give it a 5. I think it's a fantastic issue overall. You guys convinced me.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
yes, it's very, it's not generic, but I mean, it's very focused on what it's trying to tell, and it makes you think. I mean, it made us think enough to do an entire episode on it. I think that definitely makes it a very good issue.
I I initially wanted to throw in these cool little curveballs and stuff while we were doing the chat, but you know,
So good. You just can't.
the
think
organic
about
nature
anything
of
else.
our show, being what it is, sort of just took it in a much better direction than I anticipated, and I think it stems from the fact that
If I do
perhaps
say
I was
so myself.
no, I was a no,
Pat
no,
on the
I was a
back.
bit,
281
no, I wish it was
episodes
something
under
like
our
that.
belt.
But I was actually kind of insecure about my opinion on this issue because I thought maybe I
Oh,
was making something bigger of this than it actually
you're
was.
putting a fire under your ass, and where there wasn't meant to be one.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
That the
and
phrase?
so
Yeah.
so this is quite rewarding in a lot of ways for me. I'm not gonna lie. So thank you for
Oh.
that, guys. But so I don't feel like I needed to make it fun because it was already like a fun episode. You guys were really awesome, like with it.
Yeah,
I
Don't
didn't
you
have to
make it
try
fun
and make
on
it
me,
more than
Paul.
having fun.
didn't have to try
Don't
and make it
fun.
more than
Don't
it
make
was.
fun.
But
Don't you
I am
dare
going to
make
throw one curveball question, and this is something.
Word.
What if this issue ended with the nuclear weapon that they disarmed coming back from the sort of specialists and them saying this bomb was never going to go off? This
Word.
thing's What if that was the thing? And then we
Schrodinger's
could have
bomb.
and then we could have gone, wow, this Cobra organization is quite devious, you know, like riling people up like that, using them that way, giving them quote unquote real nukes. So that could have been an interesting spin-off with that. And I wonder if the writing team had ever considered that. I hope I get to chat to Larry again. This is definitely something I'm going to have on a notepad if we have the opportunity to speak to Larry Homer again. I'd like to quiz him about some of the stuff and if he remembers any of the conversations him and Mr.
I
Wisdom
would
had.
absolutely love him to. I mean, like, I think that's something I need to get onto my bosses about.
Yes. Bring him here, dude. He would love it, man.
I think so too.
I think
And the thing
problem
is, he's not
that-
a G.I. Joe writer. He's a Wolverine writer. He's written tons of
and Generation X, bro. Like
Yeah,
if
there you go.
if you guys market him as the writer of GI Joe, Wolverine, Generation X, just to name a few, and
Yeah.
you know, you'll definitely get me bringing my long box with a few of my Generation X
Well,
issues for him to sign.
Also because, like, yes, the shows this year. Well, I mean, okay, we haven't had the Joburg show yet, but the Cape Town show was very artist focused.
and it was so good, and it was
all of
great
them-
for that.
No, it was
Yeah.
absolutely. But like, I always enjoy having writers as well.
Yes, we need writers. We
mean,
need the creators.
We have, I mean, the previous years with FanCon before it got integrated into Comic Con, we had writers.
Yeah.
And to me, they're the more, not more interesting, but I like talking to the writers more than the artists personally.
Yeah, because that is
it's more
something you relate to. You know?
Yeah, it's you can pick their brains more. I mean, I unfortunately know very little about art. I can't be like, so why did you choose to shade this using this, and what was the technique you used to make his right leg look like a rocket launcher? I don't know.
Banana.
A banana. Yeah, like what is the reasoning for this perspective you used?
Well, you know, yeah, no, exactly, man. Like you want to get in there because writing gets to you. Cheeky Rob.
So I think that's something that's a goal of mine for the next year, is to convince my bosses to convince Larry Helmer to come to South Africa.
Well, something that I thought was quite cool was when I was talking to Grant from the Nexus, you know, the guy who created Up Limits, you know, the comic book shop of Johannesburg, which is now like part of the Nexus. Of Johannesburg. I mean, and guys, it was the comic book shop of Johannesburg.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And Grant and I were just chatting about some of the writers and stuff because they have a convention that was a long-running thing, and it's coming back. It's called Icon. And they had Raymond D. Feist at one of the Icons. And
incredible.
Grant was just telling me what an amazing guy he is and how much he actually knows about South African history and how well studied he is on South African history. And that was amazing, actually, like to hear that, you know. And then he just said this guy is such a treasure trove of information and ideas and stuff that they actually became friends. So Grant is actually legit friends with Raymond D. Feist, dude. I mean, Raymond D. Feist, the dude.
Wild.
Okay.
The man.
And he's not the only author that they brought in. I mean, they brought Ian Banks in the early 90s or late 90s. brought Ian Banks here. So yeah, please convince your guys to bring in like more writers. We need more writers. Artists are cool. They're definitely like
they have
lead
had a
singers.
bunch. John Layman was here. The guy who just finished on Avengers now. Anyway,
guy?
we're talking funny stuff now.
But we're just enjoying our podcast.
We're at the end of the show and we're just rambling away,
running down the clock. But thank you for joining us for this auspicious occasion, talking about
Hell
Operation
yeah.
Wingfield. Who knew we'd devote 2 hours? Well, okay, I suppose we spoke a
Wow.
bit about Sydney in the top of this, and he's talking about
Oh
comics
my
now.
goodness,
Maybe an
Stephen's
hour
traveling.
20 on issue 4 of ARA is
It's absolutely insane.
a lot
Well,
to uncover.
we're
there.
blowing through the end of the Ara one.
Yes, speaking of, we're back to comics, I think,
Next weekend.
in episode 282. So we'll be doing issue 5 and oh god, whatever the next 5 parts.
Thanks for the memories and whatever the shit like IDW does. I think it's also worth mentioning.
290, maybe. I'm
Correct.
guessing from the 4 issue arcs.
If we could give like the amount of airtime that we've given the lead up to the 10 issues leading up to episode 3 to issue 300, then I definitely feel like issue 4 for an hour and 20 minutes is actually a good balance.
Sure.
just putting that out there.
We ate our vegetables, and now we've really had our our dessert.
And something I kind of want to mention, just for us to get excited about, as we're getting to the end of the month and all that stuff, it's pretty exciting.
End of the month, yes, we're getting paid.
There's that. So just a small shout out to Greg Crockett. Thank you so much for the figures that you have sent Rob and myself, or Rob, Steve, and myself. But the figures that are destined for Rob and myself are now on the way to us, which is exciting stuff. Thank you very much, Steve, for doing the legwork and getting that to those couriers. The next thing is thank you to Mr. Ryan Sweeney. You know why. I don't want to spoil it here on the show. There's something cool on its way to me as well. GI Joe flavored that I'm very, very excited about. And the last thing is I've got something sitting in Big Bad Toy Store, which is a very new GI Joe product. We kind of mentioned it. I've got that Destro by Mezco sitting in there. So I'm just waiting for the right time and just to build up my shipping budget a bit to ship it here. So there's some exciting stuff to talk about and to get into and to help us stay current with the toys, because, you know, we do. And I think it should be noted that I did pass up on my pre-order for Rock and Roll, so Classified Rock and Roll. It was just financial considerations. It was no bearing on the figure, because that figure does look incredibly good. But you know what? I'll just have to wait until everybody else can get him in September when he's meant to come out, because I know a lot of people have got him early. So that's exciting as well. That's something I'm excited about. And I believe people are getting their shipwrecks. So that's also cool. I'm hoping that happens in the next month or two for GI Joburg.
Well, I hope people are excited to get their Falcons too.
Yes.
I believe he's warming the shelves at the big box stores these days.
Oh my god.
Oh dear.
That's one
Thank you
figure
as
that
always
needed.
to our Patreon guys.
Yes.
You are
I'll
such legends.
circle back to you in a minute. But yeah, we must always pay tribute to the individuals who support us month to month on the
Incredible.
Patreon.
Thank you so much.
Well,
and
Rob,
thank you to the guys that have been buying shirts. I've been seeing some shirts that have been purchased. Yeah, it's very cool.
Oh, hell yeah.
That's
it's
all
motivating
still
to me.
happening.
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting my life back, so I can start drawing a little bit more. I've got some. Let me not say anything, but
Got some
I'm
ideas
excited.
for
I've been
GI
drawing. I've got some
Joburg
ideas
inspired
for
art.
shirts. So yeah. So
Very
thank you
cool.
for the support, guys. Thank you. Oh, Ryan, we love you too, bro, dude. Like, I am so excited for that parcel to arrive, man. I'm speaking to Ryan directly now, dude. I'm so excited.
I want GI Joburg underwear. Can we make that happen?
Oh, actually, now that you mention it, I wonder if Spring has got those. I think they have got underpants. Yeah,
For him.
bro.
And for her.
Yeah.
And
Socks.
for
Yeah, you
they.
can-
And for them.
Yeah.
Okay,
so-
socks and underwear. I need new socks and underwear. So
So for her,
let's
should
get
it
that,
be
make
like
that happen.
Should it say like
For him
dedicated
and her.
4-inch collector or dedicated 6-inch collector? Which do you think will sell better?
I think just a very strategically placed Cobra symbol. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it.
Park his tank here. Anyway. Oh my word! This is
Been a good one, guys. And
Yeah,
we're
man.
back at it next week again. Beautiful.
Yes, Hans.
Beautiful.
Weekly. Yo, Joburg.
Oh yeah, absolutely love it.
Yeah, Joburg.